Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome back to Inside the Briefcase of Juris Prudence. We are live. It's been a few months since we've been live, so I am so excited to be back. And I am super excited to welcome Karen Chan to Instagram Live. I see that Karen has just joined. So Karen, I'm going to bring you up to the stage. Just really have been looking forward to this conversation. So I'm just so excited to welcome Karen Chan, who is the founder and CEO of Gloo Books.
Hi.
Hi, Karen. Good afternoon. You're in California, so hopefully the sun is still over there. How are you?
It's gorgeous.
Wonderful.
I'm good. How
I'm
are
here in
you?
DC, and I've just so been looking forward to this interview. It's always great to talk to another lawyer, of course, an author. You're just so inspiring. So happy to have you.
I know. Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited.
I want to just introduce you to our guests who are joining. Thank you to everyone who has joined so far. Karen is an attorney. I just mentioned that, but she is so much more than an attorney. She is also the founder of Gloo Books, which is a publishing company making kids' books for a more inclusive, just, and compassionate culture. What's That is her debut children's book. She lives in sunny Los Angeles and loves all the things that I love. Karen loves cooking. I love eating. So, Karen, I have to come over and just eat. Okay,
that works.
Awesome. I'm going to take you up on that invite. Yeah, exactly. So Karen loves cooking, eating, traveling, and especially reading kids' books with her two small boys. And I just can't wait to learn, Karen, all about your children's books and what you were like as a kid and what inspired you to start writing.
Yes. Yeah.
Of course. Thank you for being here. So, Karen, you are an attorney. Tell us what you were like. Let's go back to childhood, Karen. What were you like as a child?
Yeah. I would say I was very creative and happy. I was just like a really creative kid, constantly playing. I would make up like a lot of stories, and I think I talked to myself a lot too. I was like one of those kids who's just constantly like in my head and very imaginative. So that's probably what that's how what
I feel like that those are the makings of an author, and especially a children's author.
I know it makes sense as to like where
you're always creating. I remember writing lots of stories. Actually have some of them here in my office, just those stories that I made up as a kid. And my character is Juris Prudence in the background here, but she was very much based on some of the characters that I think I wrote about as a kid. It's really cool how that happens, how the stories that you start drafting as children do become stories that may be published later on.
Totally. Exactly.
They never
like always stay with you.
So if you are thinking, our guests, if you're thinking about writing a story, please start now, because you never know how that story will evolve. So,
right.
Karen, you talked about writing stories as a kid, making up stories as a kid. Can you tell us what you liked reading as a kid? What type of books were you into?
Yeah. Picture books for sure. Like, illustrated picture books were my jam. I mean, I loved just looking at all like the visual illustrations. I even remember as a kid, I would look through the picture book and not even read it and just make up my own story with like the pictures, So picture books are just the most magical in my opinion. And I loved like reading Roald Dahl, Shel Silverstein.
Yes, I love
Ramona Quimby, the series. I loved those books. Yes, a little later on, like Babysitter's Club, that whole series. Those were probably my favorites. But like picture book as a category were like, my absolute favorite. I still love them. I still love reading picture books.
As you are reciting those titles, I'm like thinking we should have a book club with all of the throwback books with like Ramona
Yeah.
Quimby
Oh
and
my
Baby
God.
Christie
Oh
and
yeah,
Mallory and
totally.
I think if I Stacy. Stacy, was there a Mallory?
Stacy.
Okay.
Maybe.
I like
I haven't read it in decades. I would love to actually go back and read some of those, you know.
when we have free time. I know we're writing and
I
publishing,
know, right?
being lawyers, but when we have free time, I feel like that's something that I'm gonna put on my bucket list.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'll like fill up a shopping cart full of those books and just have them laying around and I'll probably get around to them.
Well, no, 1000%. I'm with you on that. That's going to be a vacation bucket list item. And I
Yeah.
think actually, I always talk about this American Girl. I loved Addie
Yes.
growing up and actually have one of her books on my desk just because she was so inspiring to me as a character. So
Oh,
she was,
yeah.
I actually still have my doll downstairs.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah,
I loved
yeah.
that series. Oh my God, you just like triggered a memory for me. I totally forgot about that series, but yes. I remember Molly. I loved Molly.
Yes.
Hmm.
I mean, I think every girl could see themselves in one of the American Girls, which was wonderful. And I think that that's
Yeah.
what Blue Book does is create a genre of literature where every kid can see themselves, which is why I just love your publishing company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
When you were growing up, were there certain women who inspired you? Were there any in character, in fiction, or in real life?
I was thinking real life. I would probably say when I was little, even when I was little, like my mom, my mom, and even to this day as an adult, like she still serves as like a really big inspiration. I just personally, she immigrated to this country in the 70s and started her own business. So I feel like entrepreneurship like runs in our family. um, but yeah, she came, not speaking English and to be an immigrant here in this country and, have her eventually learn English, but speak it with an accent. And she worked at a job for decades and then ended up leaving to start her own business. And I think it takes a great deal of, you know, gumption and bravery and relentlessness. It's difficult. It's really hard. So I think as a kid, I saw how hard it was, but I think it's so rewarding too. And so, yeah, she's definitely someone who inspires me because she's obviously, I'm close to my mom, and to see her be able to do something as wild and difficult as like starting your own business is, yeah, it's a real big inspiration for me. So,
That's amazing. I love the story and I love just that inspirational, like where you get your inspiration. I mean, we're both entrepreneurs and
yeah.
entrepreneurship is hard, but when you hear a story
Yeah.
of moms, who immigrated here to the US, I think, like that was what a challenge, right? And to be able to here and
Right.
be resilient, I think that's just amazing. And it's me, Kat said that's so beautiful. She must be so proud of you. So
Oh,
I
oh, thanks, Kat.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, she is.
So on the hard
Yeah,
days, I think we think back to those stories. For me, it was
totally.
my grandmother. She did not go to college, but she didn't have a formal education, but she was one of the smartest women that I knew. And she
Yeah.
inspires she is a character in, I think, all of the Jurisprudence books. And
Oh, I love
be.
that.
So I love like the just going back to your core and thinking about, who were
Yeah,
the women who made you.
totally. I love that.
Can you tell us, Karen, about your journey
Hmm.
to law school and the transition from becoming or being a lawyer, and you're still a lawyer, but how did
Yes.
you tell us about how you got to law school, became a lawyer, and then started writing books?
Yeah, so I was a little bit later going to law school. I know some people like went to law school sort of a year or two after. I I guess my journey with law school started, after my first job out of undergrad. I really got involved in a lot of social justice causes when I was in undergraduate, and then worked for one of the nonprofit organizations that I had interned for while I was in undergrad, and worked for them for several years. I started their Los Angeles office, and was, you know, first 2 years, like no pay, had to like fundraise and write grants for my own salary, that kind of thing. So it was really rewarding work, and I was so glad I was doing it, but it was high levels of burnout, and I was just tired of being broke. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna, law has always been there, like as an option for me. It's something I'd always thought about. Like I was on debate team when I was in undergrad. I did Model UN in high school. I don't know if you're familiar
Yes, very
with that
familiar,
program.
very familiar.
Yeah, so I was in Model UN in high school, loved it. So I think it was all sort of part of like my interests. And so it kind of made the most sense. It's like, I think law school might be a really good fit. And I really wanted to do like public interest work. And of course, when I got into law school, I realized I was like, oh, the pay in public interest is still really hard, to like make a living, or not make a living, but just, you're still kind of scraping by sometimes, depending on what, the job is. And so I went to law school, originally thinking was going to do like public interest, and then switched to corporate. As I mentioned, like entrepreneurship was always a really big thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to start my own business at some point. And so I think it made the most sense for me to like practice corporate law as a, kind of background and knowledge to have, is eventually like if I did leave the law and start my own business, it seemed like the most applicable. And then, you're in law school and you're like tired of, being broke, and big law sort of dangles like the big paycheck. So I went to go work for a big law firm, practicing M&A. So helping companies buy or sell other companies, doing mostly transactional work. And the upside that I saw for me of that was like, at least the firm I was at was really generous with their like pro bono policies. So a lot of the social kind of justice oriented stuff that I really wanted to do with my career, I really did on volunteer basis. So worked with a lot of asylum seekers, helping them get asylum in the United States. And then helped a lot of nonprofits with their like formation and tax exemption status and stuff like that. So
Awesome.
that is my legal career in a nutshell.
No, it's very similar. We have, very, very similar backgrounds. I was on the Lincoln Douglas debate team in high school, and then on the Judiciary
Nice.
Committee in college. So so public speaking was just my upbringing. And I also was in big law, and, then left and started my own firm. But like you, just that entrepreneurial spirit, it never goes away. And then we both became children's book authors. So
I know.
How did you become a children's book author? What inspired you to take that leap from M&A? And not necessarily a leap, but what made you say, okay, I'm going to do just something different. I'm going to start this very uncharted territory, because, due diligence, memos are not the same as as writing a children's book.
No. It's so funny you say that too, because like legal writing is a very particular style of writing, and to untrain your mind out of just years of conditioning from your, law school professors and the partners that you work for on like, how to draft a contract, like contract writing and stuff, or drafting memos. It's really something you have to sort of unlearn for yourself. So, but yeah, I think I've always wanted to write a kid's book. For me, it's like the most magical thing ever. So like, why wouldn't you want to write a kid's book? And like I've shared a bit of my childhood. I've always been someone who's really creative and like loved books. And I decided to take the leap when I actually left so I had known kind of all along that I didn't want to be at the firm really long term. It wasn't something that I wanted to kind of wake up 10 years later and be like, oh my gosh, I'm still here. I wanted to sort of do other things in my life that maybe weren't like at a job at a law firm. And so I decided to leave, and this was literally like 2 months before March 2020. So I left my law firm, and, with the intention of starting a business, and I had to sort of reevaluate because I had to pull my son out of school. As many parents know, it was just like crazy times during 2020, and just stayed home for a little bit, working with him, started some freelance work, and really thought about what I wanted to do. And this is when my kid was really young, and this is at the time when I started buying a lot of kids' books for him, and we read all the time. And I had a hard time finding books with characters that looked like him in the books. And so I kind of dove deeper into sort of the issue of representation and diversity in children's literature and discovered, wow, there's like a real, this is a real issue. It's improved somewhat, I think, even since when we were kids, but it's by no means, something that I think is that's something that we are, very, I guess, representative of the world today. And so when I looked at that, I kind of took a deeper dive even further into like, well, what does it take to make a book? So I talked to some people in the industry, just friends of friends, agents, editors, and found that like the issues kind of extended beyond just the book itself. So the industry itself, publishing as an industry, is a very traditional industry. It's very gate kept. In many ways, it actually reminds me a lot of the legal industry, and I felt like there was really room to do something really different and innovative that could challenge a lot of sort of the norms of what is kind of expected in publishing. And so publishing seems very impervious to innovation or anything kind of different. So even anywhere from like, your editors and your authors, the people who are the marketers, the executives who all make a decision as to whether something is going to be greenlit, whether they want to put like dollars behind the book. And it made sense to me why you have such issues of representation in kids literature now. So then I basically started with my own book since I had an interest in writing. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to learn how the whole process works with myself first, before, publishing other authors. And that's basically how I essentially got into writing my own kids book and then starting a publishing company.
I love it. I love the entrepreneurial spirit, and I love the mission behind Gloo Books, because you're absolutely right. There are so many gatekeepers to traditional publishing, and you saw the problem and you decided to fix it directly. And I love that, because we need to see ourselves in literature. It's so important. I
Absolutely.
remember, going to the book fairs, and I love book fairs, but it was really hard for me to find a character when I was growing up that looked like me and that had my experiences. And even with American Girl, Addie was an African American girl. She was a slave, and there were no contemporary, or very few contemporary images of Black girls. And so I think that's just important. You want to experience a book and experience the character. And that's a privilege that should not be withheld from any child. So I love the fact that you are, creating experiences. I mean, books really made my world. I love books. I love books. And they were the formative parts of my childhood. So thank you for creating these experiences for children where they can really see themselves, and the future, attorneys and world leaders.
Right. Yeah. And I think everything that you said is I couldn't agree more. I mean, like the issue of representation, we want diverse stories, because like you said, if the only book that you ever saw with even a Black girl in it when you were a kid was depicting slavery, it's like there's so many other stories, like we're multifaceted, people. Like it brings a sense of humanity to, I think, especially people of color or people who are just underrepresented in general. And I couldn't agree how important it is.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I can't wait to see the other books that will come out of Gloo Books. And what are the next steps for you and for Gloo Books?
Yeah, so we are, just publishing other books, other authors. And so we have 3 books in the Very Asian Guide series. I actually have it here. Our first one is a Very Asian Guide to Korean Food.
Beautiful.
And it's by Michelle Lee. And we really, this book is really special because it's a guide to food, and it's to showcase, different aspects of Korean culture and food and culture, but it's really also to show like how diverse Korean culture is and just other Asian cultures are. So I can show you just a little bit since I have it here. So you'll always see like our characters are pretty well represented, since we let me see. like that. It's really for everyone.
Beautiful.
And so this was developed as part of a series. And so the other 3 books in this series are coming out at the end of May. So it's a very Asian guide to Indian food, Filipino food, and Vietnamese food. And then we are also working on a book about community composting. And it's written by we are going to make an announcement about it soon, but so I guess this is a sneak peek. But it's written by the executive or the director and founder of a nonprofit in Los Angeles called Compost LA. And it's all about community and composting. It's a fictional book, picture book, but there'll be some like facts about, the impacts of trash that the trash has on our environment. And then we're also working on a book that we are also announcing soon, which is a poem actually that is navigating and embracing biracial identity. And it's a really sweet poem where it's really just lovely. And so that's coming out soon. And then we're also working on, and I think Prudence would have loved this as a kid, but it's a book on voting rights.
Yes.
And so, so ahead of the 2024 election, it will come out. Probably next year sometime, but it's a story about voting rights, and we're working with a few voting rights experts who are on sort of the front lines of this work in trying to kind of articulate why voting is so important for a younger audience. But frankly, I think, adult audiences can use it too, because our government and how it works can be very complicated sometimes, even for adults. And so for us, it's, I always think about kids' books as educating children for sure, but I always say like there's an adult reading it too. So the opportunity is twofold for broadening horizons and opening minds.
No, I think 1000%. And there have been times where I've looked at a children's book and said, wait, is that right? And something actually is right that I just may have never learned or forgot. So I think voting rights, we can always use a refresher. And it's so important that children understand civic participation early and how important that is, and that parents do too. And this is Prudence's mission in this first book, riding her bike and trying to change the law to get kids the right to vote. So she will have to read this book for sure.
Exactly. I know. It's like, I think she would like this one.
Absolutely. Well, Karen, I'm going to wrap up, but tell us how we can stay in touch with you.
The best way is to follow us on social or sign up for our newsletter. And you can go to gloobooks.com. So that's GLOO books.com. And then our social tag is just the same across all social platforms. So Gloo Books.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very, very much, Karen. I'm just so excited to see the future of Gloo Books, and the present is super exciting.
Thank you.
The future, I know, is going to be even more awesome. You are just a totally fascinating person, an inspiring person, and this is why I wanted to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much.
To discuss your work, because it's so important, and I think it is changing lives. So thank you so very much.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Jessica. I'm like so glad we were introduced and we met, and so excited to see Jurisprudence and her adventures too. So thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you again, and thank you very much to our viewers. Please follow Karen and Gloo Books at Gloo Books on all social media platforms, and we will see you again soon. Thank you. Have a great evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye, everyone.
All right, thanks. Bye.